run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
It's Friday. Oh, man, are we glad to see Friday here. And it is Friday, May 2nd. Glad to see you here, too. Thank you for joining us here on the Bill Press Show this Friday morning. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, our studio on Capitol Hill, and so much to talk about this Friday morning. We'll bring you up to date on all the news that's happened overnight here in our nation's capital, around the country, around the globe, and then you tell us what you think about it all. You know the number, 866-55-PRESS. You know how to reach us on Twitter, at BP Show, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Here with you on Free Speech TV across this great land of ours and all around the planet on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Well, this is it. Big weekend in Washington, D.C., the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when reporters and administration officials and members of Congress, and of course, a whole mess of Hollywood celebrities gather together at the Washington Hilton to tell each other how good they look and what a good job they are doing. It is a weekend of self-promotion and self-glorification here in Washington, for which we apologize ahead of time. But, you know, if you want to have some fun Saturday night, on C-SPAN you can catch the president's remarks. He always does a killer job with his stand-up comedy routine in front of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's worth watching. On the political front, the New York Times reporting some big news this morning that a lot of major GOP donors are dumping Chris Christie and switching over to Jeb Bush. The big question is the country really ready? Are Americans really ready for a third President Bush? I don't think so. All of that and more coming up right here on the Bill Press Show Friday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
What do you say? You ready for it? It is a big Friday. Oh yeah, Friday, May 2nd. Our favorite day around the Bill Press Show. I hope it is yours too as well. Friday, May 2nd. So good to see you, and thank you for joining us with a lot to talk about today. How about those new numbers on Obamacare? Yes, indeed. Over 8 million people, it turns out, signing up. That's the final report. Not bad after losing 2 months because of the big screw-up in the beginning when they launched the website. But they made up for lost time. 8 million people signing up. 4.8 million people more on top of that, getting extended Medicaid treatment, and 28% of those who signed up are young people. So it turns out to be a huge success. And Republicans now realize they can't run on Obamacare, so they're going to try to run on Benghazi. Yeah, that's where we'll start today. Oh, my God, I'm telling you. Here we are coming to you live from Washington, D.C. As always, this is the big senior prom weekend here in Washington, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The parties have already started, and they go into full bore tonight, and then all day tomorrow night, and winding up on Sunday. I don't know. I'm going to be in bad shape come Monday morning.
Uh-oh. It's going to be a long weekend.
Yeah, and Peter's out of town. I don't know what I'm going to do. So anyhow, here we go. But it's good to see you this Friday morning. Again, Peter has got a couple of days off. Elisa Murphy here in charge of the team this morning and running the board and doing everything else. Good morning, Elisa.
Good morning. Happy Friday. It's finally here.
Yes, it is. We always we build toward Friday every week here. Alicia Cruz is here for your calls, to take your calls. She does a lot more than that, but she's there to talk to you and get your comments and put you on the air. 866-55-PRESS, of course, is how you reach her. And don't forget, you can also, if, I don't know, the phone's too old-fashioned for you, send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show or on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. Again, we're there on your local progressive talk radio station. We are your morning radio show on the left. Also there on Free Speech TV and on our video stream at TawkrTV. And that's thanks to our videographer, Cyprian Bolding, who keeps the cameras going and the lights on. On the video stream, it's youtube.com/TawkrTV. Wherever you are on the planet, you've got some electronic device, your iPad or your laptop or whatever, your iPhone, you can catch us on the video stream. So last night, David Letterman, at his best again, talking about the issues of the day. You know, the big battle here in Washington, D.C. this week was over the minimum wage. Harry Reid calling it up for a vote in the Senate and could only get one Republican to agree, Bob Corker from Tennessee. Only one Republican would agree to even allow a debate on whether or not we ought to raise the minimum wage. Republicans, most of them, are so set against taking the minimum wage from $7.25 to even $8 an hour, even $8.50 an hour, let alone $10.10 an hour, that they wouldn't even allow a debate. They didn't even want to discuss the issue. David Letterman picks it up from there.
Well, we have a minimum wage in this country, and they're trying to raise the minimum wage, make minimum wage actually livable. I think right now you can't really live on the minimum wage, so they're trying to raise the minimum wage. I think it's they wanted to make it $200. A guy on minimum wage now earns $290 a week, less than $300 a week. That's minimum wage in the United States. That's embarrassing. If that's the minimum wage and you're making $200, I'll tell you something. Speaker of the House, that John Boehner.
Yes.
He spends more than $290 a week on spray tan. Have you seen the guy? Look at that.
On spray
So true.
tan. Yes, indeed. He does. It's the President Obama once said it's a color not found in nature. John Boehner. Yes, indeed. Here we go. We got lots to talk about and lots of people to help us do it. Susan Rice will be along. No, what am I talking about? Susan Paige. It would be nice to have Susan Rice.
We'll work on that.
We'll work on that, right? Our national security advisor. She is a good friend, but she's not booked this morning. Susan Paige is from USA Today. Also, Joe Cirincione will be in to talk about what's happening in the Ukraine and elsewhere around the world. And Eric Burns from Media Matters will be here as a friend of Bill in the last hour. So lots coming up. We'll get right to it. But first,
This is the Full Court Press.
well, as we know, Peter does the extended full court press. I've been doing the syncopated full court press, and we'll continue to do so with just one story, off-the-wall story we have to mention before we move into the serious news of the day. Life is getting worse and worse for poor Donald Sterling. I'm almost now starting to feel sorry for him. He has been banned from life from the NBA, but that's not the worst thing that happened to him. Yesterday, Dennis Hoff, who is the president of the Bunny Ranch, famed bordello out in Nevada, banned Donald Sterling for life from the Bunny Ranch.
It's even more serious.
God. It is a fate worse than death for Donald Sterling. Dennis Hoff, whom I know, and I was trying to explain to Carol last night how I know Dennis.
How do you know him?
I can't remember, except I know that Tucker Carlson introduced us at some point. And I think Dennis Hoff was once a guest on the Bill Press Show.
Oh, really?
And I've no idea why, and I can't remember what he might have talked about. But I will say, I have never been to the Bunny Ranch and no intention of going there. But it seems to me if Dennis Hoff is banning Donald Sterling from the Bunny Ranch forever, then doesn't that imply that Donald Sterling has been one of his customers?
I would think so. I think you could assume that.
Don't you
Yes.
think? That's what I thought. Anyhow, so Donald Sterling, there you go. You thought things were bad? Things just got a lot worse. Yes. All right. I got to tell you, I might have mentioned the other night, Wednesday night, as part of the celebration of the White House Correspondents' Dinner this year, and this is the 100th anniversary of the White House Correspondents Association, we had a panel discussion with three former press secretaries. Ron Nessen, who used to be press secretary for Jerry Ford, Dee Dee Myers, who was press secretary for Bill Clinton, and Mike McCurry, who was press secretary for, of course, also for Bill Clinton, following Dee Dee Myers. And there was a couple of things said there that really sort of dropped like bombshells. Mike McCurry, for example, said that he's the one who made the decision to allow TV cameras into the briefing rooms, into the briefing room every day. And some of us went, whoa, wow, that's pretty bold. And he said he regrets making that decision. He wished he had never done so. But he did admit that it would be inevitable that TV cameras would eventually work their way in. And then Dee Dee Myers dropped another bombshell. Dee Dee said she thought we might all be better off if they just stopped having the briefings because they've become so, two things, so hostile, and also so filled with performance art was the phrase she and Ron Nessen used for that, on the part particularly of reporters, and particularly reporters in the front row, but also to a certain extent on the part of the press secretary. So you might get some good TV footage out of it, but you're not really getting much good information out of the briefings anymore. And I disagree with that. I still think it's it's the only opportunity that we reporters have to probe and to get some good information. But she's got a point. It has turned into mainly performance art. I just say that as a way of introducing this topic, which I'd love to get your take on, which is Benghazi. Because yesterday, sitting at the briefing, I came to the conclusion that maybe D.D. Myers is right, watching that briefing yesterday, which was over an hour, almost totally consumed with not the minimum wage, not what's happening in the Ukraine, right? Not what's happening with the EPA and its new rules on coal-fired power plants. Not what's happening even with Donald Sterling and the NBA. You name it. Nothing on any of the other issues, nothing on unemployment insurance, right? Nothing on climate change. The whole briefing was about Benghazi again and again and again. And I think what's happening here, I mentioned there at the top of the hour, that Republicans see Obamacare now as taking off, right? Obamacare is, you can't deny it, huge success. 8 million people signed up on Obamacare. You know where most of those people signed up? In states where governors have opposed Obamacare and opposed the extension of Medicaid, like in Florida. 40% of eligible people in Florida had signed up. So if you look at the numbers, it's stunning. 28% of the people who signed up are young people between the ages of 18 and 34. Another 4.8 million people have signed up and gotten extended Medicaid in those states which allow and have signed on to Obamacare for extended Medicaid. So I think Republicans realize we can't run on Obamacare anymore. We better find something else. Let's run on Benghazi. And they have ever since. Remember, the night of the attack, September 11, 2012, Mitt Romney, while the attack was still going on, Mitt Romney blamed President Obama for that attack on our consulate in Benghazi. And ever since then, Republicans have used that as a political football, the way Democrats never used September 11, 2001 as a political football against George W. Bush. But they've done it, and they continue to do it. And what happened this week is, after the White House had already released 24,000 pages of documents related to Benghazi, there was another document dump. Here we are, 2 years later, that a group called Judicial Watch had asked for from the State Department, and included in those documents was one email from Ben Rhodes, who works with the National Security Agency at the White House, had written an email to Susan Rice, who was going to appear on the television shows that Sunday morning after the Benghazi attack, advising her on giving her some talking points, which, by the way, everybody does. Nobody goes on these Sunday shows without getting their talking points from their staff or other people involved in the issue. And Darrell Issa, all right, I think the worst member of Congress, but certainly the most anti-Obama member of Congress, seizes, he and John Boehner and everybody else, seize on this one email and say, this proves that it was that there was a big conspiracy on the part of the White House to cover up what happened in Benghazi. Again, they've been making that case over and over again. It's been refuted so many times. There was an investigation led by Admiral Mullen, former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who laid it out exactly what happened in Benghazi. You know, these were anti-American forces. They had a big protest in Tripoli, and then that kind of spilled over into protests outside Benghazi. Yes, some terrorist groups showed up. They took over our embassy. They killed 4 Americans, including our ambassador, Chris Stevens. It's all been investigated, reported. But again, Darrell Issa seizes on this one email and says again, this proves the White House had a deliberate cover-up planned. Here's Darrell Issa yesterday.
The American people have learned that you cannot believe what the White House says, You cannot believe what the spokespeople say, and you cannot believe what the president says, and the facts are coming out.
And Darrell Issa even said this could be criminal. After 25,000 pages, I think it was 25,000 pages of documents that already released, that the fact, he says, that this one email just came out yesterday, hello, why, who knows, proves that it might even be criminal, he says, and here's how bad he thinks it really is.
This administration has knowingly withheld documents pursuant to congressional subpoenas in violation of any reasonable transparency or historic precedent, at least since Richard Milhouse Nixon.
Oh, my God, he's comparing Obama to Nixon. Now, that's how bad it is. So many questions about this. But the point of the briefing was, you expect these Republicans to make this a political football, but they could never do it without the help of the media. And yesterday, I think we saw there's so many people in the White House briefing room, almost the entire front row, who picked this up, this outrageous Republican charge, this totally refuted Republican charge that's been, just proven false over and over and over again. But reporters picking this up and pounding the White House on it, and basically becoming associates or allies of the Republican anti-Obama hate machine, if you will. So my question to you is, do you think Benghazi works as an issue? Haven't we already resolved what Benghazi was all about? And what about the role of the media in helping Republicans keep this Benghazi issue alive? A lot of questions there, I know, but boy, it is really troubling to me, and I hope it is to you too. 866-55-PRESS on a Friday morning. Here's where we start. We'll talk about it.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. Almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're going to do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory and my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, lawyer? I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru. My mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You know you like my cooking. I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Friday morning, May 2nd, Benghazi. That's what Republicans want to work on. Okay, so their whole run on this year. So their whole theory is that the reason the White House was covering this up is because they two things. They didn't want to admit in any way that this could have been an act of terror, because that would show the president was weak when it came to fighting terrorism, and so that the White House never said it was an act of terror. They've been saying that from the beginning. Now, I got to, and this latest email they're using to try to make that charge again, I got to tell you, I was in the Rose Garden the morning after that attack. Just check the record. I was there. Other reporters were there. When President Obama came out, condemned that attack, this is the morning after, and called it an act of terror. There was no attempt on the part of the White House to make it anything other than what it was. I heard the president say that. Why is this issue, why is this still alive?
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis. Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but like, go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about, you know, your next venture.
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Okay, at 33 minutes after the hour, it's Friday morning, May 2nd. A lot of good stuff coming up. Justin Sink from The Hill will be here at the top of the next hour. And then Joe Cirincione from Ploughshares Fund. That's a jam-packed second hour here. We've been talking about Benghazi and Republican efforts to keep this issue alive. You know, the other thing that bothers me, the focus here, what the focus ought to be, and I've made this analogy before. You know, after September 11, the first September 11, 2001, right? All Americans pulled together, Republicans and Democrats in Congress pulled together and said, hey, we were attacked. Let's go after the people that did it, and let's get them. It took a long time, but President Obama finally got Osama bin Laden. After September 11, 2012, starting while the attack was still taking place, again, Mitt Romney started the Republican assault to blame this on President Obama and accuse him of covering up exactly what happened there. They turned it into political football from the very beginning. Notice the contrast. Rather than focus again on we've been attacked, who did it, let's go get them. Instead, with this gang, it's always, let's find a way to blame it on President Obama. And 2 years later, they're still doing it with the full support and help of the mainstream media. Sherry, calling from Chicago. Hi, Sherry.
Good morning.
Good
Bill.
morning.
I'm so frustrated. I hope that you have plenty of towels with you when you meet with the our elected officials, our Democrats. I am so sick of the DNC and the Democrats with their sweaty hands, afraid to go head and head with these Republicans and conservatives.
Yeah, why don't they?
If you want to talk about Benghazi, then let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about H.R. 3456, that unemployment bill that's floating around. Let's talk about the minimum wage that they knocked down. You know, there's serious issues, and we sympathize with the poor Americans killed in Benghazi. But that has been beaten like a horse. Let's move on to more serious issues in this country. Democrats, with your sweaty hands, go head-to-head with them.
Amen, Sherry. Amen. And that's what bothers me is, you know, they just take on these Republicans, put them on the defensive, get off the defensive, and go after them on the issues that people care about, like the minimum wage, like unemployment insurance, like jobs, like the economy, and let Republicans break their pick on Benghazi. Yeah, talk about beating a dead horse to death. Marcia, out in Dwight, North Dakota. Hey, Marcia, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm just saying I kind of hope that they do run on that and health care, because most Americans can see the difference between what Bush did and this Benghazi attack. There's like a street fight compared to all the American lives that cost us in Iraq.
You know what? I hear you, and I sort of feel the same way. I think Obamacare is a losing issue for them now because of all the numbers, and I think Benghazi is a losing issue for them.
And I agree with that last caller too. We need to get the Democrats to speak up, get loud.
Absolutely. Get mad, get angry, and put these Republicans on the defensive. Hey, Marcia, so good to hear from you way out in the plains at Dwight, North Dakota. How about that? Well, you know what, folks? What day of the week is it again?
Friday.
Yeah, it is a Friday, and you know what we like to do on a Friday? Friday, we like to kick back at some point during the show. And today, we're so busy about the only time we'll have a chance to do it. But it's one of your favorite parts of our Friday show, where we kick back, take a look at some of our favorite sound bites of the week, and bring you our clips of the week. We bring you the top 5. Start at the bottom, work our way all the way up to the top. Sarah Palin speaking to the annual convention of the NRA, not the National Restaurant Association. This is, yes, the National Rifle Association, saying, man, those terrorists, here's what I would do if I were in charge.
Number 5.
If I were in charge...
Oh, yes, Sarah.
They would know that waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
Oh, yeah, let's just make jokes about waterboarding. Maybe we could make jokes about lethal injection, too, after what happened in Oklahoma. Sarah Palin, would be making jokes about it. Well, so much news this week about, remember Cliven Bundy? No, nobody else does either. They all forgot about him. It was Donald Sterling week this week in terms of racist comments. He got the hammer dropped on him, but it all started on the famous audio tape when he told his girlfriend, yes, it does matter that you're hanging out with black players.
Number 4.
You perceive as either a Latina or a white girl. Why should you be walking publicly with black people? Why? Is there a benefit to you?
Is it a benefit to me? Does it matter if they're white or blue or yellow?
I guess that you don't know that. Maybe you're stupid. Maybe you don't know what people think of you. It does matter, yeah. It matters.
Yeah. You're stupid if you think the color of one's skin doesn't really matter in terms of who the person is. Yeah, you're stupid. Yeah, Donald Sterling. Yeah, he is like Donald Trump. You're the stupid one. Well, big news in the late night front this week. We know David Letterman already made his announcement that he's retiring sometime in 2015. The guy who follows him, Craig Ferguson, said, hell, Dave's not around. I don't want to be around any longer either.
Number 3.
At the end of this year, I will be stepping down as the host of this show. Thanks, everybody. That was quite convincing. I'll be stepping down at the end of this year in December, and then I'll go and do something else. Probably, I'm thinking carpentry.
A great guy, very, very funny, a long, successful run, and he will go on to do some other great things. Unlike David Letterman, he's not really at the end of his career, just taking a left turn, I guess, or right turn, who knows. And back to Donald Sterling. So everybody was saying, oh, man, David Stern, the last NBA commissioner, he used to put up with Donald Sterling's tricks. What about the new guy, Adam Silver? Is he going to stand up, show any backbone, and do what's got to be done? Damn straight he did, and made that announcement Tuesday afternoon in New York.
Number 2.
Effective immediately, I am banning Mr. Sterling for life from any association with the Clippers organization or the NBA.
Whoa, there it is. Also fined him, of course, $2.5 million. And he called on the owners to gather soon and to vote Mr. Sterling out of the NBA, thereby forcing him to sell the team. Apparently, we've been told that the vote will be 29-0 so far. Every single other owner has said he supports Mr. Silver's decision. And finally, our top and favorite clip of the week. It was Conan O'Brien talking about senators not really understanding who 50 Cent was or is.
Number 1.
Yesterday, this is strange, Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer mistakenly called 50 Cent a singing group. Meanwhile, Republican senators called 50 Cent a fair hourly wage.
Oh, Conan O'Brien. He did a great job, by the way, a couple of years ago as the comic entertainment at the White House Correspondents'
Oh, really?
Dinner.
Was he there one year?
Yeah. Did a really good job. We'll see how Joe McHale does this weekend. Anyhow, there we go. Susan Paige standing by. She's the Washington Bureau Chief from USA Today. Very interesting interview this week with retiring legendary Congressman John Dingell. We'll talk to her about that. Other news of the day coming up here on Friday, The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
on your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, 14 minutes before the top of the hour here. It's Friday morning, May 2nd. Time to check in with our good friend, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, Susan Paige, who is probably primping right now, getting ready for the big White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend. How you doing, Susan?
I'm doing well, Bill. How are you?
How many of these dinners have you been to?
I've been to every dinner since 1980, starting in 1980.
No kidding.
I know.
Whoa. You beat me. I've been to everyone since 1996.
Oh, you're just a kid.
Well, I know.
Just a newcomer.
When I came to Washington. Wow. So how have they changed?
Oh, my goodness. When I started going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, landing the Secretary of Agriculture as your guest was considered a prize.
Yeah,
I don't need to tell you this is no longer the case.
You were a big shot if you had the Secretary
of Agriculture. Nothing wrong with Tom Vilsack as a guest. I'm just saying it no longer carries quite the clout at this dinner that it once did.
Well, you know, famously, Tom Brokaw refused to attend, right? Boycotted the dinner. Was it last year or the year before? Because Lindsay Lohan came.
Yes, right.
Greta Van Susteren's guest.
Yeah.
It does get to the point of being pretty ridiculous, doesn't it?
It's become a different kind of event, that's for sure. It's no longer an event really featuring, spotlighting the people who actually go to the White House every day to the briefing. But things change. You know. It's still an evening you want to be at.
Right. I must say, to me, sort of the kind of the best evidence I've seen of how it has changed is I inquired about maybe getting an invitation to one of the parties. I'm not going to name the party, right?
Yes.
And I was actually told that they were really looking for non-journalist guests.
Yeah, because it's not a journalism dinner. White House Correspondents, what's journalistic about that?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, nothing. So the idea was they didn't want anybody that had anything to do with the press at the dinner, right? And what's the whole thing about? It's just crazy.
You should have what was the Groucho Marx line? He didn't want to go to any party that wanted to invite him.
Didn't want to be a member of any club.
Yes.
Right. That wanted him as a member.
That should be your attitude.
All right. Well, I'll see you there in the mob somehow. Some interesting numbers yesterday coming out. It seems like every time they release the numbers on Obamacare, the numbers get better and better for the administration, huh?
Here's the two things that happen that are so remarkable. The numbers get a little better, and the public reaction to the Affordable Care Act does not change.
I know, isn't it? Overall, right? If you look at element by element, sometimes there's some real strong support for various. But why is that? It's just...
I think, and by the way, I'll just give you a heads up that we have a big USA Today Pew Research Center poll coming out in Monday's paper that includes some data about the Affordable Care Act, about the economy, and about the midterm elections.
Yeah.
Definitely worth whatever the cost is now of buying our newspaper.
Yes, indeed.
But, I think number one, attitudes are pretty now set on the Affordable Care Act, and what's going to change that is a little time to show that it either works as promised or doesn't, and that over the long term will shape attitudes. But in the short term, after 5 years of warfare over it,
right,
people have pretty much made up their mind, and the administration did themselves no favor, obviously, with the botched rollout of the website last October.
No, absolutely, well said. John Dingell, been around Congress longer than anybody in history, I think, right?
Any longest-serving member in U.S. history.
Wow, and you sat down with him this week?
I did.
What are his reflections and thoughts on leaving? And by the way, how Congress has changed since he got there, right?
It's how the government's changed. Two more states since he got in Congress.
No.
5 times, yes, Alaska and Hawaii were not states at the point he was sworn in. 5 times more women serving in the U.S. House now than when he arrived. 6 more cabinet departments. I mean, big changes in the government. And, huge changes in the way Congress works or doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
And he talked about his disappointment in the current state of affairs there.
Now, I also saw that you asked him about all the presidents that he has served under and how he rated them. I'm very interested in that.
It was great because John Dingell, as you know, is a pretty candid guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, for instance, Bill Clinton, I said, so what's your shorthand assessment of Bill Clinton? He said, if not for one flaw, he would have been a great president. So I said, naturally, well, what's that one flaw?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to tell you, ask any man or ask any woman.
He is a very candid guy. Yeah, but who did he think was the best?
Clearly, he thought FDR was the best.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a member of Congress when FDR was president. But when FDR, the day after Pearl Harbor, when FDR went to the House chamber to address a joint session of Congress, John Dingell was 15 years old, was a page, and was in the House chamber.
Oh my God! Yeah! Wow! What a great thing to do is grab him before he's out of town, right? To get that interview.
Even better than going to all these White House Correspondents' dinners.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I was intrigued, Susan, I'm sure you were too, an article on the front page of the New York Times this morning that Republican donors are seriously considering, a lot of them already done so, dumping Chris Christie for Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
And then I want to play a quick clip for you. Former President Bush is talking with CNN's Jake Tapper yesterday, and he was asked about Jeb. Here he is.
I hope he runs. He's been an effective chief executive of a big state. I'm confident he can reach out to people that may at this point feel like the Republican Party doesn't listen to them. I'm also pretty confident he won't be making any definitive decision until after the 2014 elections, probably right about this time next year, I would guess. But so hey, Jeb, if you need some advice, give me a call.
Give me a call, right?
Do you think Jeb Bush finds it annoying that members of his family keep speaking it up in public, telling him what he should do or not do?
Yeah, I know. It's sort of like he's still the little boy. They have to tell him what to do.
That's right. His mom, his brother.
But it is interesting. I mean, he hasn't run for anything since 2002, and yet, people keep talking about it. What do you think?
He hasn't run, and he chose to not heed the entreaties last time around.
Yes,
a lot of Republicans wanted to run last time around. I have a pretty strong feeling that Hillary Clinton's going to run. I don't have a feeling one way or the other on whether I think Jeb Bush is planning to run, laying the groundwork for that, or is just trying to keep his public profile up and give speeches. I don't know, but there is an opening in the Republican Party for a kind of a figure who is going to be acceptable to the establishment.
Right.
And Chris Christie is now, of course, damaged goods. Maybe he'll be able to repair that damage, but I think that opening is there, and I guess if Jeb Bush wants to take that ground, I think he probably could do so.
Yeah. Well, and then the other question, of course, is America ready? Are Americans ready for a third President Bush or a second President Clinton?
Yeah.
So, it goes both ways.
Is this our only choice, as Barbara Bush would say?
Okay. All right, Susan, I'll look for you in the crowd Saturday night.
See you there.
The parties beforehand. All right, thanks. Susan Paige from USA Today, Washington Bureau Chief. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Justin Sink from The Hill covers the White House for The Hill. Will be here in studio with us in the next hour, as well as Joe Cirincione from Ploughshares Fund, another very important big hour, second hour coming up here. And in our last hour, Eric Burns will be here from BullFight Strategies as a friend of Bill. Very interesting movement yesterday. Democrats in the Senate announced that they are soon going to schedule a vote on a proposed constitutional amendment. This is something that Senator Bernie Sanders has been talking about. It's going to come up for a vote, a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United and the latest McCutcheon decision on the part of the Supreme Court on campaign finance. So sort of a counter-offensive to John Roberts' effort to get rid of all campaign limits on campaign contributions. That's a tough road to hoe, a tough hill to climb to get a constitutional amendment passed, but Democrats are going to go for it. Good for them.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
It's Friday. Oh, man, are we glad to see Friday here. And it is Friday, May 2nd. Glad to see you here, too. Thank you for joining us here on the Bill Press Show this Friday morning. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, our studio on Capitol Hill, and so much to talk about this Friday morning. We'll bring you up to date on all the news that's happened overnight here in our nation's capital, around the country, around the globe, and then you tell us what you think about it all. You know the number, 866-55-PRESS. You know how to reach us on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Here with you on Free Speech TV across this great land of ours and all around the planet on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. TawkrTV. Well, this is it. Big weekend in Washington, D.C., the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when reporters and administration officials and members of Congress, and of course, a whole mess of Hollywood celebrities gather together at the Washington Hilton to tell each other how good they look and what a good job they are doing. It is a weekend of self-promotion and self-glorification here in Washington, for which we apologize ahead of time. But, you know, if you want to have some fun Saturday night, on C-SPAN you can catch the president's remarks. He always does a killer job with his stand-up comedy routine in front of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's worth watching. On the political front, the New York Times reporting some big news this morning that a lot of major GOP donors are dumping Chris Christie and switching over to Jeb Bush. The big question is the country really ready? Are Americans really ready for a third President Bush? I don't think so. All of that and more coming up right here on the Bill Press Show Friday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
It is Friday, May 2nd. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Friday morning. Here in our nation's capital, that's where you find us in our studio on Capitol Hill, booming out to you all across the United States of America, coast to coast, on your local progressive talk radio station. There for you every morning, and you're there for us, and we appreciate that. There for you on Free Speech TV. If you got a satellite dish, you can find us on DirecTV, of course, or the Dish Network. And we're there for you worldwide on our video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. Peter Ogburn off for a couple of days down in New Orleans for the Jazz Fest. That means Elisa Murphy, here, head of the team, taking care of the board and everything else, keeping things rolling. Good morning, Elisa.
Hey, good morning. Happy Friday.
Yeah, indeed. Alicia Cruz there to take your calls. Remember, you can join us anytime by phone at 866-55-PRESS or send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show or on Facebook at facebook.com/BillPressShow. And on Facebook and on the video stream, keeping those faces looking good, our videographer, Cyprian Bolding, this morning, as always. And we thank him, and we welcome to the program a good friend, Justin Sink, who joins me every day at the White House briefings. Justin Sink there for The Hill. Good morning, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, nice to see you again. A big weekend, huh?
The Hill,
of course, The Hill has a big party tonight.
It's going to be exciting. You pulling me in here at 7 a.m. is maybe going to hold me back tonight, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know. My bosses might hope that it holds me back tonight.
Well, you take a nap in the afternoon, so you'll be ready for the party tonight.
Yeah, just slide under my desk.
It is probably one of maybe 20 parties scheduled for tonight. I don't know.
There's a big push tonight, and tomorrow's even crazier around the dinner.
Before the dinner and after the dinner, especially, right? So,
but I think it's going to be a great time. It's going to be great. You know, it's always fun gawking at the celebrities, but also getting a chance to kind of see people from the White House, see fellow reporters in a less formal situation, at least.
Susan Paige from USA Today in the last hour told us that when she's been to every White House Correspondents' Dinner since 1980.
Wow.
And she said when she started, having the Secretary of Agriculture as your guest was a big deal.
I think The Hill's aiming a little higher or a little lower based on what your rankings are. We've got I think Brooklyn Decker and Andy Roddick coming as our guests.
Oh.
Talk some tennis, some swimsuit modeling, which is something that I know a lot about.
Yeah, all right, reaching out for the celebrities again. By the way, speaking of celebrities, Rob Ford up in Toronto, the most interesting politician of the moment. We know that he announced this week that he is taking a little time off. He's running for re-election, but he's taking some time off to get some treatment, to get some therapy, deal with his drug problem. David Letterman had some fun with that last night.
Well, the city of Toronto has had it. They issued this announcement. Take a look. We got this off Canadian television. Watch.
Toronto Mayor Rob Ford has accepted that he has a drinking problem, so he is entering rehab. Managing alcoholism is never easy, but Mayor Ford is ready to take a crack at it and determined to crack down on his drinking. He pledges to get up every day at the crack of dawn and get cracking with his crack team of addiction specialists. And while alcoholism is a tough nut to crack, and sobriety isn't everything it's cracked up to be, Mayor Ford is determined not to fall between the cracks. So to all the wisecracking critics out there, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Rob Ford. Crack, crack, crackety, crack, crack.
You'll take a crack at it. Every way you could possibly use the word crack.
It's funny. One of my best friends grew up here with me in D.C. and now lives with his girlfriend up in Toronto. And I keep telling him, I don't know what it is about you inspiring crack-smoking mayors, but you just get it one way or the other, no matter where you are.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Here and there, right?
Exactly.
You got it. Hey, so coming up, Justin here for the top of the hour. Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund coming in at the half in the next hour. Eric Burns will be here from BullFight Strategies, and we'll be talking with the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center about that botched execution out in Oklahoma. We'll get right to it with Justin, but first...
This is the Full Court
Justin,
Press.
here's a quick little off-the-wall story I just want to mention to you. Justin Sink, that's how you go by. Do you have a middle initial?
T.
You don't use it.
I should. I use it in my email address, so I really should bring it back because it sounds more authoritative, maybe, to throw it in there.
Well, that's what I wanted to point out. Now, I am Bill Press. Okay, my real name, which I never use, is William Press. I just don't like William. But I also have a middle initial and a middle name, which I don't like.
Yeah.
Which is Henry. So I never use mine. Never William H. Press even. But there have been 7 studies recently reported this morning that those, for people who use a middle initial, it helps them in life. It helps them be taken a little more seriously. It gives them a certain gravitas. People 7 different studies have proved, like John F. Kennedy, right? Lyndon B. Johnson, Baines, or whatever. It gives them people. We tend to perceive people with middle initials as more eloquent and more qualified.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So start looking for Justin T. Sink.
But I was thinking, it's not Barack H. Obama.
This is a little trickier. It's funny. My parents gave both my brother and I middle names that we could use as last names because they knew Sink is kind of a weird last name and one that maybe we might want to get rid of in the future. They're not real keen on it. So my middle name is Tyler, which could be a last name, and my brother's is Cameron, which could also work as a last name. So maybe I should start. I don't know, messing with my byline.
Right. Yeah. But I just was wondering, that article struck me as curious. Okay, that's enough of that. There was a panel the other night as part of the White House Correspondents Association celebration of the dinner this week and its 100th anniversary. A panel the other night where former press secretaries talked about their experience at the podium. Ron Nessen, who was there for Jerry Ford, and Dee Dee Myers and Mike McCurry, both of whom were there with Bill Clinton. Both of them dropped bombshells. Mike McCurry says he wishes he had never invited TV cameras into the briefing room. And Dee Dee Myers said she thinks we all might be better off if they just didn't have briefings anymore. You're there every day. Are they worth it?
I think they're definitely worth it. I think it's always important to have a chance every day to sort of ask the White House about what their thinking on things are, what they're doing, be able to press them on sort of the issues of the day and where the president stands on them. And I do think that those are very useful. But I think there is a point. If you watch these briefings regularly, I'd say at least half of them are television reporters in the front row asking the same questions over and over again. And there's a reason for that. They, cut packages for the nightly news every night, and they want to see themselves pressing Jay Carney or whoever's up there briefing on the tough issues of the day. So, whatever it is, Jonathan Karl wants to see Jonathan Karl asking it. Jim Acosta wants to see Jim Acosta asking it. Ed Henry wants to see Ed Henry asking it. And that's useful for their television packages, but as a reporter in the room or as somebody who's interested in the kind of a wide range of topics that the administration might have, it does get kind of...
Right. And there's another factor, too, which Ron Nessen talked about, which he said that, sadly, he feels that because of the presence of the TV cameras, that the press conference has turned into so much performance art. And so it's not ask a question, get an answer. It's challenge, rebut, challenge, attack, again, for the TV camera.
There's an amazing difference between when they do private briefings that are on background or not in front of cameras and journalists and administration officials who might very much play up those dramatic things can very systematically ask a question and have it answered honestly and simply. And it's a real sort of information exchange, and it is a shame that the briefings have gone that way. I think a great example of this has been the last couple of days as we've been discussing Benghazi.
I was just going to get there. Yesterday's briefing was over an hour, and almost all of it was a repetition of the same talking point and the same kind of attack, if you will, on the administration, echoing what Darrell Issa and John Boehner had said on the Hill, that the White House is trying to cover up that this was in fact a terrorist attack, and they didn't want anybody to know it.
And it's certainly given fuel to the fire. I think that when you kind of drill down as to what the actual issue here is on the new emails that came out about Benghazi, the question is, okay, the CIA had talking points that said that it was linked to protests in the region. Those CIA talking points didn't say what the protests were about, which was this anti-Islam YouTube video. It ended up not being the case. The attack was pre-planned, but this is all known. The only new sort of element here is that in an email from Ben Rhodes, who's the Deputy National Security Advisor for Communications, talking generally about the protests in the Middle East, he makes the logical connection that the protests were about the anti-Islam video. It was certainly implied in the talking points that were given by the CIA, but it wasn't explicit. If you're a Republican and you're trying to make hay out of Benghazi, you can say, okay, the White House is the one who raised the anti-Islam video in preparations for Susan Rice. And that might be a fair point to make, but it certainly doesn't. I mean, we've heard Lindsey Graham say that this is a smoking gun. We've heard other Republicans.
Darrell Issa said it was criminal.
Yeah.
The worst thing since Richard Nixon.
And there are serious questions about why the White House didn't just turn this memo over when they were turning over, or this email over when they were turning over other emails. These are fair and legitimate questions to ask, but they're fairly simple questions. It could take 10 minutes of why didn't this come out before? Were you the only ones to raise the specter of the video? And then we're done. But instead it's kind of, it's turned into a back and forth that isn't really generating any new information and isn't really getting anywhere other than to blow the spectacle out and to make for TV packages that we see on all the morning shows this morning and all the evening newscasts at night.
And I think when I was at the panel the other night and heard Dee Dee Myers say, press briefings have gotten to the point where they're so hostile and there's so much performance art and there's so little information that she said it's worth thinking maybe we'd be better off without them. And I thought, Dee Dee, who's a friend of mine, Dee Dee, you're crazy, right? I mean, you still get some good information. Sitting through the briefing yesterday, I thought maybe she's right.
Well, I do know that it makes...
What did we learn new yesterday at the briefing? Nothing.
Yeah,
right.
It was
nothing.
It was. I ended up writing about sort of the performance art of it because
you did.
That was the only sort of new information that came out of it was, and I mean, not to carry water for Jay Carney because he in some ways invites this himself. You saw on Wednesday him immediately start to engage with Jim Acosta from CNN. He did that again yesterday. He's kind of mocking him at times. He really went after Ed Henry, accusing him of spitting conspiracy theories and that sort of thing. And that, it's not just reporters who are guilty of this. Jay Carney threw fuel on the fire repeatedly.
Yeah, it's just that one clip that we have there about where he talks about the talking points, Elisa, or Jay Carney. Yeah.
How much time has been spent focused on talking points that could have been spent on moving forward to help create jobs in this country and move the economy, grow the economy?
Yeah, and it was the one before that too. That's where I think where he took a slice at Fox News and Ed Henry's bosses.
So this is with Ed Henry as well.
Ed Henry's asking the question, and then Jay.
Why then on 9/14 is Ben Rhodes writing an email that is making judgments that this was inspired by a video? Why is it not, hey, we just don't know. We're investigating it.
Do you
Why not
need a
say
copy
that?
of the CIA talking
I've
points?
seen them.
I can
You
get
can read them out all you want. Go ahead.
The only thing in that email that refers to Benghazi is a cut and paste from the talking points, which, much to your disappointment and your boss's disappointment, turned out to be produced by the CIA. Whatever information in there that turned out not to be accurate has been addressed multiple times by folks at the CIA and elsewhere.
Yeah, and I must say, I don't think I really fault the course of Republicans for keeping this issue alive. I could fault too many people, I think, in the mainstream media for helping them keep it alive. But I don't think the administration has done a very good job either of just explaining exactly what happened and getting the information out there.
Yeah, I mean, Fox News has certainly made it a cause for them to blow this up. And so I understand why the administration's frustrated, but when you're Jay, you have to know that taking those personal attacks at Fox, at Ed Henry, who, I mean, Ed's question was above board and one that needed to be asked. When you do that, you give more ammunition to the problem. And Jay's, not certainly the first secretary to do this, but we saw this kind of, as they were discussing Obamacare, he would pick these strange fights that ended up causing him more trouble than good, even though, they were based in a frustration that came from a sincere place.
Yeah. And then the overriding question, whether the American people really care about Benghazi at this point. Obviously, enough Republicans on the Hill think that they do, that they're keeping the issue alive. And it has certainly dominated the White House briefings for the last 2 days. Just in sync there. In the back of the room, escaping the crossfire, perhaps. But he's here with us this morning. Your questions, your comments, 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You make it sound very easy to take these 90-degree turns in your career. You went from engineering to law. But there's an awful lot of people at that age who feel they're on a track, they've invested time in learning a career, and they need to see it through to the end, or maybe their parents are pushing them to stay in one route. What is your advice for a young person?
Stay away from your parents.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
My mom is a pretty spectacular human being. We essentially came to the United States as refugees. And that is when I really got to understand who my mom was as a person. Being a refugee in a foreign country, you would think that it would affect you so much. It was like my mom, nothing changed for my mom. What was really at her core and her center was always being with her kids and getting to spend time with them and making sure that they were okay and making sure that they could still go out and play soccer. I knew that if my goal was to go to Liberia and to work on economic justice so that, kids could go to school and have access to a doctor if they have malaria, that if I bet on their moms, we win.
I think I just come from a lineage of kick-ass women is all I can say. My grandmother came to this country from Mexico as a single mom with 5 children. And I, have an amazing mother who had 3 children, was going to school, working full-time. I mean, almost my story. But she did that and got her bachelor's degree at 40. And so I had a great role model. When I came home and told my mom I was pregnant, her response to me wasn't, your life is over. Her response to me is, well, I want a plan. You need to, let me know what you're gonna do about this because you're now responsible for somebody else.
I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents were very proud of it. They both had to work. My mom in a factory, my dad in the supermarket, and I was their success story. However, on graduation day, they said, are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be a businessman? What are you going to, a lawyer? He said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And they said, what? My parents were very much opposed to this, and it was very difficult.
How much pressure did they put on you?
Tremendous pressure. Up until we were leaving from O'Hare Airport for me to go to Peru, my mother questioning me, like, where is Peru? You've never been out of the country. What do you know? Do they have doctors? Do they speak English there? What are you going to eat? You like my cooking? I said, Mom, I'm going to be a pioneer. Why do you always have to be the pioneer? Let them do it. Let them come back, and then you go. I said, no, I want to be the first to go.
I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, so there was a lot of gang activity, and one of my friends actually was murdered on a basketball court when a 15-year-old child shot him in the back of the head. And I was just hopeless. And my mom actually, she brought me to a place of empathy for the kids who were involved in actually murdering him, because my mom sort of said, look, where do you think those kids are coming from? And then she said, so if you're angry about it, do something. Actually change the way this world works.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, almost out of time here in this half hour. Justin, too much time on Benghazi, perhaps. Joe Cirincione joins us at the half hour. So the president today in the Rose Garden, we will be there. A news conference with Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany. Do you think she'll have her cell phone with her?
Well, that's going to be the real sort of subplot of this. I know that a lot of attention is focused right now on whether Germany will move forward with additional sanctions against Ukraine. That's sort of the big topic. But underlying this whole thing is this sort of mistrust over the tapping of Merkel's phone. And the New York Times reported this morning that efforts to kind of broker a no-spy agreement between Germany and the U.S., which is intended to save face for Merkel a little bit, have just fallen apart. And that could really, underscore some animosity or frustration between those two leaders and complicate the U.S.'s efforts to sort of get Germany on board with larger sanctions against
I would
Russia.
imagine, just quickly, that the White House's goal here is to have some agreement between the two of them that are going to crack down on Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, the Russian and German economies are so interwoven that Germany is the big kind of holdout and the ones who can have a big impact on Russia if they...
All right. Well, Justin, we got a busy weekend. I'll see you at the Rose Garden a little later, and then at the big party tonight.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for coming in.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I talk to undergraduates and graduate students who are desperate to go out and start something and build something and be the one to come up with that silver bullet solution. And I just want to say, slow down.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
Most of the people you're talking to who want to come into the social change space, are they prepared?
If you're early in your career, there's a couple of really important things to do. The first one is just to shut the hell up and don't talk for about 5 years and work really, really hard. The only way you're going to be given more difficult things to do is by solving the ones you're already given. And if you're somebody who's always complaining or wants to be promoted above where they really are, you can't learn enough to start to take on a greater pool of responsibilities.
Advice you would give a person coming out of college is go work for other people, make your mistakes on their dime.
That sounds like me, absolutely.
It does sound like you.
And you know who that came from is one of my board members, Eric Buttline. Eric had seen me start a few companies as a young kid. I mean, I started my first real company when I was 16. And Eric said, Chid, do me a favor. I know you have this thing in your head that you think you're this great entrepreneur, but go work for somebody for a little while and just learn how things are supposed to be done. And when you're done with that, let's have another conversation about your next venture.
And I think another thing to remember, and this is something that I've really only learned in the past couple of years, is that although the problems are urgent and so important for us to address, I need to have more patience. I'm not going to solve those problems on my own. You're not going to solve those problems on your own. I'm an apprentice in all of this. I'm an apprentice in life. I'm an apprentice in problem solving. I'm not going to change the world until I'm at least 65. That's my goal at this point.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
Tune into the Thom Hartmann Program, a live broadcast featuring the nation's #1 progressive talk show host. Phones open at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, Friday, May 2nd. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our studio on Capitol Hill, brought to you today by the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers. Put them together, and you've got the SMART Union under President Joseph Nigro. And those good men and women giving a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. You bet. Get more information by going to the website at smart-union.org. President Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel having a joint news conference this morning in the Rose Garden about 11:30 this morning. And one of the things that they're going to be talking about, one of the big the reasons for the chancellor's visit, to Washington, is to discuss what to do about Vladimir Putin and the Ukraine. Here's the man with the answers, Joe Cirincione, head of the Ploughshares Fund, good friend of the program, in studio with us this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Bill. Don't overpromise. Answers are hard to come by.
You go right from here down to the White House and just kind of lay it out. How are you doing? Everything good?
Just great. Yeah, things are moving along very nicely. Thanks.
It is frustrating what's happening in the Ukraine, right? Because there's an important principle at stake here, which is sovereign boundaries of any nation, right?
Yeah. First forcible change, in European borders since the end of World War II. It's not that Crimea is of vital strategic importance to the United States. It doesn't really matter if it's part of Russia or us. It's the principle of how it was acquired and how it joined Russia. And now what's worse is you're seeing this happen in eastern Ukraine itself. Clearly, Russian-backed, maybe Russian themselves, militia units moving in and taking over now a dozen buildings in towns in eastern Ukraine, destabilizing. Mr. Putin yesterday telling Merkel that it's time for Ukraine's forces to pull back from the border. That's how we're going to solve the crisis.
So when you have a leader like Vladimir Putin who doesn't care, right? I mean, cut them off from this, cut them off from that, throw them out of the G8, don't have a summit in Sochi. I mean, how do you deal with him, short of military force?
It's clear that in the short run, Putin has the cards. He's got the forces. This is his area. We're not stationed there. NATO forces aren't stationed there. So he's got the cards. In the long term, however, the way you pressure him is on the economy, and that's what President Obama is trying to do, imposing sanctions and pulling a unified front of European and U.S. Economic actions. And he's getting criticized because people said the sanctions are too weak.
Right. So the sanctions, they don't seem to have had an immediate impact, right? And part of the problem is we cannot do it alone.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And the European allies are hesitant to go further. So you say, why doesn't the U.S. just do it? Well, you need the European banks to go along with this. It's not enough for the U.S. to try to cut them off from the U.S. banking system. The Europeans have to agree. Right now, the Europeans aren't agreeing.
Because?
Because they're afraid of the economic impact. We don't have much of an economic relationship with Russia.
Because of the energy connection, right?
Right. They buy a lot of natural gas, and they're also doing business. So none of the major corporations, Western corporations that are doing business with Russia, have ended those practices or cut them back.
Do you think there's anything, can you think of anything that we should be doing which Obama is not doing? Again, short of military. Because even my reading of it, even John McCain, who keeps calling it a feckless foreign policy and everything, doesn't recommend military action.
Right. So the papers are filled with columns from the right today, blasting Obama's weakness.
Putting this as part of a bigger picture, right? That overall he's a failure when it comes to foreign policy. Right?
Exactly. And they end up with, the suggestion is weapons. Give Ukraine weapons. There actually might be a little bit of validity to that, but nothing that's going to tip the balance. I mean, the problem you have now in eastern Ukraine is that there is a weak, ineffective, corrupt Ukrainian police force, and these guys are getting brushed aside by these organized militia groups. Better weaponry wouldn't solve the problem.
And does the Ukraine have, I mean, you have to give these weapons to somebody. Does Ukraine have a large, trained, capable military force? Ukraine.
Small, trained, not very capable military force.
But they haven't shown it so far.
Right. I mean, for example, military analysts agree that if Russia were actually to militarily invade Ukraine, the Ukrainian force couldn't stop it. They would roll right over them. There'd be casualties. There would be a price. It would be a war, but they couldn't stop it.
Does Putin have his eyes on? Well, first of all, let's talk about eastern Ukraine. He's got Crimea. I don't think Crimea is ever coming back to Ukraine. How about eastern Ukraine? Is he going to get a piece of that too?
He had promised. He had said he has no intentions, but every day they're doing something. Every day there's another town or city hall taken over. So he's clearly moving in that direction.
Right. In the wake of the agreement in Geneva, which was we're going to start getting out of the buildings, instead they're taking over more buildings.
And what he's trying to do is force a Ukraine to adopt a federalized system, meaning that the different areas of Ukraine would have a vote on what the national policy is, meaning he could block Ukraine from ever joining the EU, ever joining NATO. That's what he's looking for. You do that, you leave them isolated, and he believes still under Russian control.
So some kind of autonomy for eastern Ukraine?
A federated system. They'd be recognized as a region, would have a vote, be able to block the more pro-West policies that Western Ukraine wants to follow.
And beyond eastern Ukraine,
no, there's no support for Russia. There's quite the opposite. I mean,
does he have intentions beyond eastern Ukraine?
I don't think so.
Yeah, right.
I think that's impossible for him. There is. I mean, eastern Ukraine is pro-Russian. There are a lot of Russian speakers, and you see it in the stories and the reports. There actually are people. These aren't Russian thugs. There are people saying, I want to be part of Russia. This is how I've always felt.
So let's get back to the bigger picture, because if you look at, and this came up at the very end of the president's Asian trip in this famous exchange with Ed Henry in the news conference
from Fox News.
From Fox News, but you look at Syria. You look at Ukraine, right? You look at the Middle East. You look at no trade deal in Asia, and people are making the conclusion this guy, when it comes to foreign policy, has been a failure. And President Obama said, no, you look at it, and it's been a steady pace. Maybe no big fireworks or dramatic, accomplishment, but steady improvement. How do you read it? Is the criticism valid?
There's some validity to the criticism, but basically, no. I mean, the president is doing what the American public wants. The polls are clear. The public doesn't want to bomb Syria. They don't want to go to war with Iran. Overwhelmingly, they don't want us involved in Ukraine. I mean, the cause celeb of the moment. No, the American public. And, by the way, neither does the military. Mm-hmm. So the president is basically doing what the U.S. public and military wants. The problem is these problems then persist, and he doesn't have something short of forceful military action that can fix the problem. And then it's compounded by the third factor, which is the relentless attack of the Obama hate machine that you have documented. I mean, they take everything he does and they put it in this frame of weak, dangerous, naive, and it's relentless. And all you got to do is turn on Sean Hannity. I turned him on last night to watch the number one news show in that time period, and he's railing about what? Benghazi.
I just wrote it down. I was just going to get to Benghazi. Oh, yeah. And that's all they've been talking about this morning.
Benghazi, what? This fictional, made-up crisis, they're harping on it, and then everything else just fits into that. And then you go to the president's hometown paper, the Washington Post. Today, they got 2 columns blasting him from Charles Krauthammer, always, and then the free-spending chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Buck McCain, blasting him over this quote, over this interview, over what they call his feckless foreign policy. And then the editorial board weighs in on Iraq and talks about bloody Iraq and how Obama is to blame for the violence in Iraq. Nowhere in any of those columns is there any recognition of the former president, Bush, and the disastrous wars that he created. Obama came in to correct those huge mistakes, and he's done that. Last month, for the first time, no U.S. soldier died in either Iraq or Afghanistan since the beginning of those wars. And his policy is, I'm not making any major mistakes, and you got to give him that. There have been no major mistakes on his watch. Nothing to compare to the disasters of the Bush years.
There he is, Joe Cirincione, fighting back against these Republicans. It's a concerted attack. We just talked with Justin Sink about it at the top of the hour. The White House briefings the last 2 days, just the mainstream media picking up the Republican talking points and on Benghazi, particularly Benghazi, and pounding the White House and over and over. And people even saying, well, doesn't this prove that the entire Libyan operation was a mistake? Where I think Obama showed us a new way of intervening.
Well, he did use military force.
And he did use military
force. To save
force.
innocent civilians who were being slaughtered by Gaddafi's military.
But we did it in a way with allies where we were basically in a support position, and we let them go up front, and there were no American lives lost, and we accomplished our mission.
Yes, quick, easy, cheap.
Yeah, but no credit for President Obama. Your thoughts, your questions, welcome here with Joe Cirincione from the Ploughshares Fund, 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back on this Friday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Bill Press Show brought to you today in part by LifeLock. Yes, indeed. You hear so many stories about identity theft. Remember the big one about all of the over the. Eleven minutes before the top of the hour, at the top of the next hour, Eric Burns here from BullFight Strategies as a friend of Bill, talking hot spots of the world and President Obama's foreign policy with Joe Cirincione, our good friend, president of the Ploughshares Fund, and you can follow all the many things they're involved with at their website, ploughshares.org, Plough, shares.org. What is the latest in the Middle East? It looks like John Kerry has made this a priority.
Yes.
He's really tried to bring the two parties together, and every time they get close, it seems to fall apart.
Yeah, well, first you got to give the guy credit. In the Bush administration, 8 years, the Bush administration, nada, nothing, zero. Let the problem get worse. Settlements proceed. No attempt to reach a unified Palestinian government, anything like that. Okay, so Kerry's in there pitching. This particular attempt fails, but Kerry's got the long view. I mean, he's been working on Middle East policy for almost 4 decades now.
Yeah.
So this effort fails, it falters, can't get it. He was hoping to make it. Okay, retrench, take a step back, wait for the next opportunity. Meanwhile, go work the other issues, particularly, of course, Ukraine, as we were just discussing. But in the region, Iran. Iran is the big issue that he's working, got his squarely in his sights, working to get an agreement to stop Iran's nuclear program. Deadline July 20th. That's coming. I think we're going to get a deal.
Really?
I think we're going to get a deal.
So the bright spot if there is one, right now, where things are moving in the right direction, is Iran.
Yes.
So all places. Who would have thunk it, right?
Of all places. Even David Sanger of the New York Times, generally pessimistic, panning the president's trip to Asia the other day, talking about the collapse of the Israeli-Palestinian peace talk, says this is very much on the table. In Washington, you've seen expert opinion just shift dramatically over the last month. A month ago, people were saying, no, won't never get a deal by July 20th, have to be extended. Now people are having conferences like the one I went to at RAND 2 weeks ago, the days after the deal. The deal is coming.
Yeah.
What does that mean? We have to start planning for it. So that's the expectation in Washington.
All right. And you know what we haven't talked about for a long time, and nobody has not one question in the White House briefing room in the last week or so about Syria.
Oh, yeah. So it
hasn't gotten any better, has it?
It's gotten worse. There's no question the rebels are getting pushed back, that the Syrian military
The momentum
forces,
is really on Assad's side, isn't it, now?
It seems that every day there's another gruesome attack from these barrel bombs. In the papers today, there's news of an attack in a market, people just shopping, getting vegetables, and then 2 minutes later there's body parts all over. Just awful stuff. We are making headway on getting rid of their chemical weapons. Almost all of them are gone. There's just about 20 barrels left that are still held in place, precursor chemicals for sarin. There's negotiations over that. So we're getting rid of some of his most horrendous weapons, but it's the weapons that kill 10, 20 at a time that he's still using in ruthless manner.
And President Obama has said that Assad must go, that he just cannot continue as leader. This phony election coming up, right? Yeah. I mean, it looks like he's there to stay, Joe. How do we get him out?
Right now, it looks like he will be able to retain control over a good portion of Syria, 50% or so of Syria, with the rest sort of outside of his control. Some of it, including the more Kurdish areas, starting to block with the Kurdish areas of Iraq and Iran itself. So the only way to get him out is that in the end, there's got to be some kind of peace deal to establish normal economic relations. Russia's got to play a role in this. Russia, his back ally. And if we get a deal with Iran could start to play a positive role in brokering a deal.
And finally, it was announced yesterday, the president just came back from Asia, a week-long trip now, and the end of this month, early June, he is going to Belgium, he's going to Poland, and he's going to France. So is this sort of what presidents do in their second term, is they try to make foreign policy their kind of legacy?
There's no question that Obama still sees these areas as legacy issues for him. So that's why increasingly, I keep coming back to this, the deal with Iran. This is one of his big gets. He gets this. Yeah. This is an historic moment. This is a strategic turning point, in not just with U.S.-Iran relationships, but the Middle East relation. So increasingly, Obama has to get this deal, which is why one of the reasons I'm so optimistic. But of course, he's going to Poland to shore up our Eastern European allies. We just sent 150 troops there. Same for a few other countries. A small token force, but enough for those countries. They just want a tripwire, and Obama's going to go there to show political support.
Well, if he gets that deal with Iran, as Joe Biden will say, that will be a BFD.
That is all we're going to be talking about in July. I'll be back.
All right. Okay, Joe Cirincione. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming in.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
My pleasure.
I'll see you a little bit later, for sure. Joe. And I'll be back to tell you what the president's up to today in the Rose Garden. Angela Merkel, big news conference coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay, not yet. Can't go away yet because we have hour number 3 coming up. I know we lose you on Free Speech TV, but we'll keep you around on the video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR-TV. And in the next hour, Eric Burns, a good friend from BullFight Strategies, will be along as a friend of Bill, and we'll be joined by Richard Dieter from the Death Penalty Project to talk about this botched execution in Oklahoma and what we ought to be doing about the death penalty. Hour number 3 on Friday mornings. Stay tuned.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine.
I would make medicine for the sick.
I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
This is the Bill Press Show.
President Obama welcoming a very important guest to the White House today, German Chancellor Angela Merkel. He and the Chancellor hold a working session starting at 5 minutes to 10 of this morning. They'll be working through the morning, take a break at 11:40 to hold a news conference out in the Rose Garden. I'll be there. Then he has a working lunch with her this afternoon. And then later this afternoon, meets with business and faith leaders to discuss immigration reform. In the next hour, Eric Burns joins us as a friend of Bill. Then we'll talk to Richard Dieter from the Death Penalty Information Center. Stay tuned.
The Bill Press Show.
California, or the Golden State, has been in the midst of a 3-year drought, and this year, some scientists predict could be the driest in 500 years. Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency in January and in February of this year. The world's 10th largest economy, California is also the United States' top agricultural producer. Half of all our fruits and vegetables come from California. The Golden State is not the only place on the planet struggling for this vital resource. In December 2013, the World Resources Institute found that 37 countries face severe water shortages. Free Speech TV would love to know what you think about this fight for water, especially if you're from the Golden State. Please call our comment line at 1-888-378-8855 or email us at comments@freespeech.org to let us know your thoughts.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I'm a Pistons fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governor should come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts, and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got. A lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to, not eligible for Social Security. So the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor's allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed to where. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Latest numbers on Obamacare show it is more popular than ever. Over 8 million people now having signed up. Yeah, keep running on that, Republicans. Keep saying nobody wants it. Yeah, we'll see how that works. Good morning, everybody. What do you say? Here we go. It is Friday, May 2nd. So good to see you this morning, and so glad it is Friday. We're coming to you live from our nation's capital, all the way across this great land of ours, coast to coast. We're there on your local progressive talk radio station, and all around the planet. We're there with you on our video stream. Hello, Finland. There you go. We're there for you this morning on our video stream, which is TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. And look who's back. As a friend of Bill, I haven't seen him in a while. I was so excited he's back. Eric Burns from BullFight Strategies.
Yeah,
Eric,
it's
you're
been a
looking
while.
Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great to be back, man.
Eric is a former Texan,
Still a Texan.
Still a Texan.
Always, once a
Okay.
Texan, always a Texan.
I guess that's true, isn't it? Right.
It is.
I don't know whether I still count myself as a Delawarean.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's different in Delaware. It's even different in California. It's Texas.
I consider
It's like a whole
myself
other country.
A Californian who started out in Delaware. Yeah, no, Texas is a different country. But anyhow, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see
Peter
you, my friend.
Ogburn is got some time off here. He and Lucinda. Sorry. Levisa's another friend. Lucinda down in New Orleans for the Jazz Fest, but Elisa Murphy is here.
Surviving.
Great job. No, keeping things going, flying the 747. Alicia Cruz on the phones. Some people say all they ever see is her hand when she waits.
She's busy working.
Waiting for your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And don't we look good on the video stream? That's because of Cyprian Bolding. He could do all kinds of stuff with that video if you wanted to.
That's why I pay. I slip Cyprian like $20 before I walk in,
I advise
just to
everybody
put the baby oil
to do
over
that,
the screen,
because otherwise
all those blemishes go away.
It can make us look as bad as we really do. Yeah, so, how about it? So, one of the big issues that they this week in the Congress, of course, was the minimum wage. Harry Reid tried to get it through, tried to get a vote through. We'll talk about that a little bit. David Letterman had some fun with that last night and bringing in John Boehner into the mix.
Well, we have a minimum wage in this country, and they're trying to raise the minimum wage, make minimum wage actually livable. I think right now you can't really live on the minimum wage, so they're trying to raise the minimum wage. I think it's they wanted to make it 200. A guy on minimum wage now earns $290 a week, less than $300 a week. That's minimum wage in the United States. That's embarrassing. If that's the minimum wage and you're making $200, I'll tell you something. Speaker of the House, that John Boehner,
yes,
he spends more than $290 a week on spray tan. Have you seen the guy? Look at that.
That's how expensive that spray tan. It really is.
Kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Yes,
it certainly does. It certainly does.
So Eric Burns here with us for this first for the full hour as a friend of Bill. Actually, we'll be joined by Richard Dieter from the Death Penalty Information Center at the half hour to talk about that botched execution in Oklahoma and what we ought to be doing about the death penalty in this country. I'll get right to it with Eric, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Eric, Peter always does the Full Court Press. Yep. I can't do it as well as he does with 3 different stories. I just one off-the-wall story, though, that I have to mention because it is so important. Just announced this morning, if Donald Sterling thought it was... bad news when Adam Silver fined him $2.5 million and banned him for life from the NBA.
Sure.
It's gotten worse now. The latest bad news to hit Donald Sterling is that Dennis Hoff, who is the owner of the Bunny Ranch, famed bordello in Nevada.
I've heard of it.
Has banned Donald Sterling for life from the Bunny Ranch.
No. Has that ever happened? I mean, you've got to really, really mess up to get banned from the Bunny Ranch.
Don't ask me. A fate worse than death, right? I mean, yes.
For him, I'm sure.
Donald Sterling says, "No, you can have the Clippers. Just don't take the bunny ranch."
Whatever you, not that, please.
I love it. I was trying to explain to Carol last night how I know Dennis Hoff, because I do know him. I've met him, and I can't remember. It was not at the bunny ranch.
Sure, I was going to say, no. You can't remember, Bill, I'm sure.
No, right. It was not.
I've had those nights.
But I do remember I was introduced to him by Tucker Carlson.
Of all people, who else would introduce you to Dennis Hoff Tucker?
And I can't remember the context or where. But
just hope that Tucker doesn't remember the context either.
We must have all been drunk. But at any rate, Donald Sterling, that's the latest news. But it seems to me, tell me if I'm wrong, that if Dennis Hoff is banning Donald Sterling from the Bunny Ranch,
sure,
can one assume that means that Donald Sterling has been a regular customer of the Bunny Ranch?
It would seem, yeah, I don't know. It would seem that he might have a reason to ban. Like, why else would he actually ban him? I don't recall anyone else making racist statements in the last couple of years getting banned from the Bunny Ranch.
Exactly. No, it seems to me that you could.
There's a reason.
Add 1 and 1 and get the 2 there. Okay, just don't want to go out on a limb too far here. Here we go. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, the minimum wage there, because I mean, try to help me out. I don't understand why these senators who are making $175,000 a year, which I figured out yesterday is $85 an hour, want to prevent your average American, not an average American, but the lowest wage Americans, from being able to make $10 an hour. I mean. But yet only one Republican was willing to vote to even open debate on the minimum wage. Why is this a winning issue for Republicans? Help me explain that. You're a former Republican.
Well, I'll
never let you forget it.
You won't. Who used to work for Rick Perry, as you usually announce. As you usually give me the intro. Just briefly, though. Look, I think Republicans, this isn't their constituency. The folks that make minimum wage are not folks that generally vote Republican. So that has a lot to do with it. And then I think part of it is you think about kind of the William F. Buckley, Milton Friedman school of conservative economic thinking that still, I think, lingers around the Republican Party, and they just generally believe that there shouldn't be any sort of interference or government regulation. A lot of these Republicans would like to see there be no minimum wage whatsoever. However, economically speaking, it's actually just wrong thinking. I mean, they can actually prove, professors can actually prove that if you raise the minimum wage, it's essentially like a rising tide that lifts all boats. It generally helps the economy overall. And of course, with any change, there's always a little bit of short-term adjustment in terms of some short-term job loss. But over the long term, historically speaking, it's helped the economy when we've raised the minimum wage.
The last time we did this was in 2004 under President George W. Bush. And many of the same Republicans who were there then voted for it under George W. Bush.
Yes. Well,
same Republicans, and yet they're voting against it under President Obama. So there's something else at play here, too, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a Democratic president, and we know this is a hyper-partisan Republican conference and Republican Party that we have today that have, from day one, 6 years ago, have set out to destroy this administration and prevent any success, for Democrats along the way. So I think that plays a huge role in this. But it's a serious problem. I mean, there are folks, like looking at McDonald's is a great example. The Agenda Project, my friend Erica Payne from the Agenda Project, they just did kind of a mockumentary video involving Ronald McDonald as like a freewheeling executive denying his employees, an increase in minimum wage since they actively worked against it. And, the CEOs at McDonald's, they make something like 1,200 times what their minimum wage employees make, who were making like $15,000 a year.
Right.
Working full time.
Well, it's criminal. So the result of people keeping the minimum wage at $7.25 an hour is, as you just pointed out, they work in 40 hours a week, full 52 hours a year, 52 weeks a year, and they're making $15,350 or something like that. They are living it's below the poverty level.
They are living.
They're living in poverty.
And
working a full-time job and living in poverty, which is an outrage.
Well, we're just we're the most powerful, the most wealthy country in the history of civilization, and it's absurd that such a large percentage of our population still has to go through this, because the issue isn't, are poor people better off than they were 40 years ago? I'm sure they are. It's the gap, the growing, the rapidly increasing gap between the rich and the poor, which we know is terrible for the economy and prospects going forward for all of us.
One of the other issues, of course, and we just mentioned that at the very top of the hour, that the Republicans have planned to run on this year is they're going to run on Obamacare, right? Nobody wants it. It's a total failure. We have to repeal it and put the insurance companies back in charge because they don't have any other program to replace it with. They just want to repeal it. Well, the numbers came out yesterday, the latest numbers on this first round, because now we had the deadline, and then beyond the deadline, they extended the deadline for a little bit, and the total numbers are out now. Over 8 million signed up in the health exchanges.
Yeah.
Over 8 million. On top of that, 4.8 million people have expanded, have Medicaid now through the expanded Medicaid program in those states that allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And 28% of the people who signed up are between the ages of 18 to 34.
It's incredible.
So, I think it's pretty clear that Obamacare has been a huge success. They exceeded their goal, far exceeded their goal of 7 million.
Yes.
So how can Republicans still run on the fact that this is a failure?
Well, this Republican Party kind of lives in their own reality, as we know. This plan, Obamacare, was actually a Heritage Foundation plan. So this is a Republican plan that this president very, very astutely adopted, because it was the one they thought they could actually pass.
Republican plan, remember, that was first adopted and embraced and put into place by a Republican governor of Massachusetts by the name of Mitt Romney. Yeah.
And it was very successful in Massachusetts, and it's going to be very successful across the country, and we're going to see healthcare costs go down as a result of increased competition. The hidden cost in all this that people don't really think about is that when you have huge numbers of uninsured folks in this country, when they get sick, they wait until they're deathly ill. They go to emergency rooms. They don't have the money to pay for it. They have to get cared for. And so we all end up paying for it anyway through county taxes and local taxes.
What's the reality? You signed up for Obamacare.
I did. And it was, I have fantastic coverage. And it's going to cost me, several $100s a month. I mean, I kind of got the Cadillac package, but I'm ecstatic about it. And it's more reasonable than anything I would have gotten anywhere else or through an employer before.
Did you have any trouble navigating the web?
Not at all. It took me 30 minutes.
Really?
Now, granted, I waited pretty late, but it took me about 30 minutes.
Have you paid your premium?
I need to do that actually today.
All right, because that's the other question.
Yeah.
People sign up,
yes,
but you don't.
It doesn't start until you pay your first premium.
And you're dealing with a private insurance company, so the private insurance company is not going to cover you until you pay your premium. And
yes.
So the question has been asked at the briefing room often, how many of those 8 million have actually paid their premium? I was just curious. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just signed up for it recently, and right on the deadline, which is classic me.
Right. Dude, pay your premium. just want to
I'm going to
remind you. So here's my my thinking is that Obamacare now, I think it's harder and harder to make the case that they're going to repeal it. Even some Republicans now are saying. Kathy McMorris Rogers from Washington State, part of the Republican leadership in the House last week, said, Obamacare is here to stay.
Of course.
We're going to try to fix it, make it better, which is what they ought to do.
They should keep making it better forever.
Exactly. But she admitted, you just forget about repeal, because we're not going to repeal it. It's here to stay. So I think knowing that, more and more Republicans knowing that, they decided, well, we can't run on Obamacare. Let's find something else to run on this year. How about Benghazi? We'll talk about that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. Eric Burns is here from BullFight Strategies, covering the waterfront, the political waterfront. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. Hey, we're having fun, so join the fun. Join the conversation when we come back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Aww, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork. loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
25 minutes after the hour, we saw what happened in Oklahoma this week. Will that stir up maybe some action on getting rid of the death penalty in this country? Richard Dieter is the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, joins us in studio with me and Eric Burns from BullFight Strategies. Eric, I know I do want to talk about Benghazi, but
do you really want to?
No, because there's something more interesting to me. Okay, I mean, I just think
they're talking about it.
Yeah, everybody else is talking about it. There's too much hype about Benghazi. We know what happened. President Obama's focus is on getting the people responsible for that attack that killed our 3 Americans plus fourth American, our ambassador. That's what the focus ought to be on, not trying to say there's some conspiracy on the part of the White House to cover it up.
There's just not.
There's nothing. There's no there. And
no, and I mean, I say that as someone who's been a communications director, worked in federal government, at least not in the White House, but on the Hill, seeing how these talking points get created. This has just been a case study in absurdity, and the right just desperately trying to pull anything that they can.
Yeah, and Darrell Issa is fanning it and keeping it alive, and has held countless hearings on it so far. And sadly, the mainstream media is helping him do his job, including some who work at the White House. But what I want to ask you about is, on the political front, front page story on the New York Times this morning, that a lot of mainstream Republicans, big money Republicans, are dumping Chris Christie because he's damaged goods now, and instead are looking at Jeb Bush. And yesterday, Jake Tapper had a chance to interview former president, older brother, George W. Bush, who was very, very candid about what he thinks about his baby brother's chances.
I hope he runs. He's been an effective chief executive of a big state. I'm confident he can reach out to people that may at this point feel like the Republican Party doesn't listen to them. I'm also pretty confident he won't be making any definitive decision until after the 2014 elections, probably right about this time next year, I would guess. But so hey, Jeb, if you need some advice, give me a call.
That was cute.
Hey, brother. Yeah, what's some advice? So, is America ready for a third Bush, President Bush?
I think that I don't know about that. I don't think so. Is the Republican Party ready for a third Bush is even a better question. In fact, in that quote, I believe George Bush kind of spoke to that. He said that he feels like a lot of folks out there feel like their Republican Party isn't listening to them. And so, I mean, that's a direct reference to the Tea Party.
Absolutely.
And to the kind of the grassroots takeover of the party. But this was by no means was this just kind of an accidental, Jake Tapper asked him the question and he answered it. The Bush family does not operate that way. This was planned. This says to me, signals clearly Jeb's put his hat in the ring. Quinnipiac poll just came out showing he was at 27%.
Yeah.
Can he get the nomination?
So he's moving around out there and he's doing his thing, and then he's got his family speaking out, and so it's all orchestrated, which means he's probably going to run.
Yeah, he's the only one with a shot if he can get the nomination.
All right. We'll come back, talk death penalty with Richard Dieter.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. When I say dot, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, Friday morning, May 2nd. Can't go into the weekend yet, but got still lots to talk about here in this last half hour together with Eric Burns. Here's a friend of Bill and president of BullFight co-founder with Carl Frisch. All right, yes, can't leave Carl out of this equation here. Good to see you, Eric. Thank you for coming back. Richard Dieter from the Death Penalty Information Center, just a couple of minutes away by cab. He'll be joining us shortly. 2 points. We were talking a little bit about the minimum wage. Worth pointing out, important to point out, that Seattle yesterday became the first major city to increase the minimum wage up to $15 an hour. Very significant. You know, most that the Democrats in the Congress have been trying to do with President Obama's approval is $10.10 an hour. Yep. But Seattle, $15 an hour, and get this, after it reaches $15 an hour, the city's minimum wage will automatically increase by 2.4% every year, regardless of the rate of inflation.
Oh, so it's essentially
it's not even it's not even indexed to inflation. It's cost of living adjustment every year, 2.4%. That's great. Which is, I think, the most generous. It's getting closer to a living wage than a minimum wage in Seattle, and you know, good for them.
Totally. It's a values issue. I think about my grandfather who spent 50 years working for Tenneco, and his entire career. And that obviously doesn't happen anymore. Our economy has changed, but there's no reason that with these big multinational corporations that they can't be paying their employees a living wage.
And
because they still make money. They still make plenty of profit, even when they're paying $15, $16. McDonald's pays $16 an hour in Australia. They make plenty of money.
Right. And as what the president has said, there's no need for these companies or for cities or counties or states to wait for the federal government to act. They can act on their own. President Obama set the example by signing that executive order for federal contractors. So he said, "I'm a CEO. Mm-hmm. You know, I will do this for our employees going future on any future contracts, up to $10.10 an hour." Now Seattle's going to $15 an hour. California has also gone to $15 an hour. So companies can do this on their own.
They can, and it's more than just a moral issue in the sense that the folks that are on minimum wage or low wage earners, they spend every dollar that they bring in every month, and they contribute that right back into the economy. So going up from $7.50 where we are now to $10.10,
$7.25, right.
to $10.10 is just going to increase the amount of money that gets put back into the economy.
Absolutely,
in the right places that are going to help economic growth.
Right, particularly people on this pay scale. You give them another $50 a week or whatever, they're going to spend it.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned Jeb Bush just before the break, where we were talking about the latest Quinnipiac poll. It's actually a poll that looks at the Florida voters. And in that poll, Jeb Bush leads among Republicans, former governor, leads among Republicans with 27%, followed by Rand Paul with 14%, Marco Rubio at 11%, and Chris Christie at 7%. Ted Cruz at 6%. So I guess the question is, why should we be surprised that Jeb Bush is so popular in Florida?
We shouldn't. I mean, he was the governor there for years and is still obviously a towering political figure in Florida. I didn't when I said it, I saw it on a chyron, didn't realize it was for Florida. I think that changes the significance of it quite a bit, because you have to assume that he's going to get a pretty big bump from Florida Republicans. That says to me it's a much tighter race. Nationally, I would imagine.
What I find a little surprising is that he has 27%, and Marco Rubio, the current senator, only has 11%.
Yeah, well,
27 to 11.
Poor Marco Rubio in that State of the Union response. I don't think he'll ever live that down.
We're going to take a break and bring in Richard Dieter here, but before we do, other breaking news. The Department of Labor announcing this morning that in April, the economy added 288,000 new jobs.
Look at that.
And the unemployment rate dropped down to 6.3%.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, those are good numbers. Richard Dieter from the Death Penalty Information Center coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
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 How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough. 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 Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
as an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
At 19 minutes before the top of the hour on a Friday morning, May 2nd, headline the Washington Post this morning, a closer look at the death penalty in the United States, brought about, of course, as a result of that botched execution in Oklahoma Tuesday evening. What does that closer look, what's it all about? Where does it lead? Richard Dieter is the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, also a professor of law at Catholic University here in Washington. Joining us now in studio this morning. Richard, nice to see you.
Thank you.
And Eric Burns still with us here as a friend of Bill.
Great to be here. From
BullFight Strategies. So we thought that we had finally, Richard, achieved the kinder and gentler method of death penalties, which was a lethal injection.
Yes.
I guess it's not so kind and gentle after all, is it?
No, although what's precipitated this is a refusal by major drug companies to sell the drugs that states used to use and that used to be sort of formulaic. And so states like Oklahoma are experimenting basically with new drugs, and things did not go well on Tuesday night.
This was, in effect, a lab experiment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a human subject, unwilling, trying something new that Oklahoma had never done, and you could see how they weren't prepared for the eventualities. Things went wrong, but they didn't have a backup plan.
Right. So I just have to point out, you made the point, but that the drug companies have higher moral standards in this than the government. The government still wants to kill, but the drug companies are saying, you can't use our drugs to do that because it's obviously something wrong with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to put it a little more broadly, I think they have some self-interest. I mean, they want to produce things for health. They want to be their brand is making people better. Being associated with an execution really doesn't help them. Now, maybe they have a moral objection as well, but it's
I would say maybe it's bad PR for the drug companies because
exactly.
if other drugs kill people with the pharmaceutical companies, that sometimes is okay with them.
Right.
Not that it's okay, but that they don't necessarily pull it off the market.
So that does raise the question then, is there any way, any scenario under which the death penalty is anything other than cruel and unusual punishment?
Well, I mean, that begins with a moral judgment or a humane sort of process. But all methods of killing, unwilling subjects, there's a resistance to our basic, process. People, don't want to be executed, and people who are doing that feel that there's something wrong. So I think there is an intrinsic problem, and then you weigh against the crime, and people get over that. But there's no clean, pure, efficient way to execute human beings, and that's why they keep changing the methods.
But so at the same time, how many countries have banned the death penalty?
Well, it's about 140 out of 200. So it's almost most of the world. We're in now a dwindling minority of countries that retain the death penalty, and we're fifth in terms of executions in the world. So we're right up there with Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq.
Good. And I would imagine our crime rate is probably higher than many of the countries that have banned the death penalty.
Oh yeah, our crime rate is higher certainly than in Europe, Canada. Our close allies who have banned the death penalty, and it's true here in the U.S. A lot of our states don't have the death penalty. We're not uniform in having it, and those states are often places that have lower murder rates, and consistently have had that. So it's not producing the effect we'd like to see.
Okay. So the arguments for the death penalty, right? it's a deterrent to serious crime. It's not, is it?
No. There was a National Academy of Sciences study that looked at these and said, you can't really draw much from 39 executions, which is what we had last year, in a country of 320 million where, most of those executions occurred in just 2 states. To say that the death penalty has some national effect on crime. So I think that argument actually is not why the public supports the death penalty. It's much more the other, which is retribution.
You're left with, without that, you're really left with retribution.
Yes.
Well, and let's face it, politicians, someone who's worked on campaigns, politicians like that tough talk, when they're on the trail. I mean, it feels safe, and it feels, it feels good to say, hey, I'm tough on crime. I'm for the death penalty, and 3 strikes and you're out. And if someone uses drugs, let's throw the key, let's put them in jail and throw away the key, because it makes people feel safe and secure. But it doesn't work.
So, I mean, retribution can make you feel better, but there still is something called the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah, no, and that's the...
So, you can't get around it, right?
It's a tricky judgment, though, at least in the Supreme Court, and they're the one who tell us how to interpret the Eighth Amendment. So, obviously, the death penalty is cruel. It's becoming more unusual, but they're going to look at the states. They're going to look at how often it's used, rather than at the objective fact that, somebody's strapped to a table and stuck with needles, and sometimes it goes wrong. They're going to look at how our standards of decency are evolving. And death sentences are down. Executions are down. I mean, this case was all over the news, but it's actually becoming rarer that we're using the death penalty. 6 states abandoned it just in the past 6 years.
Both of these men in Oklahoma were African Americans. The numbers that I saw, 40% of the prisoners on death row in Oklahoma are African American, compared to 4% of the population. So that's something else about the death penalty overall, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is unfairly applied.
I mean, that's lingering in the back of the minds of many Americans. They know it's unfair. As a matter of fact, in 1972, the death penalty was stopped, and the sense was, this is part of the civil rights changes, and it's gone. But because of the, I think, political value that the death penalty has in sort of solving a difficult problem, crime, it's come back. But, race is still out there. We do one after the other. It's a black defendant, poor, the victim was white. That's still the death penalty today.
Guys, one quick question. Is this case, this horrible incident in Oklahoma, is this kind of like the moment where somebody could take this and make a case to the Supreme Court that the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment, when we have a state experimenting on folks, and of course then we have a botched procedure? I mean, it seems kind of like the perfect example.
I think we'll have to see more coming out. Obviously, if something was pure accident, unintended, and unforeseen, then accidents happen, and it's not a cruel thing if something like that. But if this was a result of negligence, if this should have been foreseen, if they were experimenting without vetting, and secrecy has played a role in this, because they're secret about the drugs, secret about who was this doctor, not the best, secret about changing why the dose, why these drugs. It makes it seem like they really weren't quite sure of what they were doing, and they didn't want to talk about it. That, I think, is more actionable, although I don't think the Supreme Court's going to say the death penalty is cruel and unusual because of what Oklahoma did. But there's a piling up of things that I think may come before the court at some point.
Now, you mentioned so accidents do happen, right? One thing about the death penalty, which I think is, to me, the strongest argument against it, is mistakes happen, but if you make a mistake with a death penalty, there ain't no correcting it.
Yeah,
I mean, and how many people, I think the numbers I saw, 140 some people since 1973 on death row have been found innocent of the crimes that they were sent to death row on. And do you have any doubt that we have executed innocent people?
No. I don't, and I think.
Do we know how many we have?
We don't know how many because there isn't a forum. You don't have a trial or appeal after you're executed. So but again, the evidence is accumulating that DNA came along basically in the mid-1990s, but we were executing people before DNA came along.
Sure.
If DNA had been applied to, those 800 cases or so, we'd find some of them who were innocent, but they're gone and executed, and the evidence is, destroyed. So it's hard, but clearly, Cameron Willingham in Texas, who, they thought it was an arson. Now all the experts say it was an accidental fire. There was not even a crime. He was executed in 2004.
My God.
Sandra Day O'Connor said she had no doubt that just statistically,
yes,
that we have executed innocent
fair
people.
judgment would have to conclude. It's a price. So are we willing to pay that price? How many innocent people? That's where the debate is coming.
I just read Justice John Paul Stevens' book called 6 Amendments. A great jurist, and he says one of the 6 amendments he thinks to the Constitution we ought to have is amend the 8th Amendment.
Right.
So when it says cruel and unusual punishment, such as the death penalty, mark it right in there, make clear you know what you're talking about. Amend the Constitution to get rid of the death penalty. What are the chances?
I don't think the Second Amendment or any of those amendments are probably going to be, that's a big step. I mean, I think there's sufficient grounds under the 8th Amendment right now to find the death penalty unconstitutional, but there's a, political pressure on this. The death penalty is arbitrary, racially biased. Accidents are predictable in a way that they're going to happen. Mm-hmm. All of that should add up, and I think there's enough concern on the Supreme Court, but there's that sense. The court's taking it away from the public.
So it's more likely to be state by state.
Yeah, until they reach a critical mass of states that you could say, look, we did abolish the death penalty for juveniles when 30 states had already abolished it, and hardly anybody was getting, any juveniles were getting it. So the court is going to wait for not an opinion poll, but for some more indicia of cruelty.
This is a very political court. I mean, the Roberts Court is a very political court. They're going to have the right case come before, kind of come up through the system to, and then the court would have to agree to hear it. I don't know that they would. The fact that Justice Stevens, has kind of put this out there as an amendment that ought to be says that there's at least some folks on the court that feel that way. I'd be curious as to how Scalia and Roberts and Alito and that way. Though I think we all know the answer to that.
I think we know the answer to that.
But isn't it true that it costs more money to put someone to death than it does to incarcerate them for the rest of their life?
Yeah, I mean, people, again, it's the public thinks, well, I don't want to keep paying for that guy 40 years in prison. But the legal costs, it's now well accepted. I mean, if you go through the trials, the appeals, and even keeping people on death row, which is expensive, it's 3 times as much as keeping them in prison for life. I mean, it's a cost. Are we willing to pay it? Yes, if it does something positive. It's not just spending money, but that money could do other things. We could have more police on the streets, better lighting in crime areas.
Prevention, yeah.
Prevention is people really want to see crime decreased. The death penalty is not doing that, and it focuses a lot on the defendant, sometimes in a garish way, but that's where the emphasis is. As long as you have the death penalty, stick them in prison, it's pretty much forgotten, for better or for worse.
Well, Richard, I think this is a turning point here. I really think the American people are coming around. I hope the politicians follow them. But part of it is thanks to the good work of organizations like yours. It's the Death Penalty Information Center. You can find out more about their good work and all the statistics you need at deathpenaltyinfo.org. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Keep working on this important issue. All right, Eric Burns, always good to see you, my friend.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Come back anytime. All right.
I'll be back on Monday.
I'll be back and wrap things up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case. Turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment, and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Again, good news on the job front. 288,000 private sector jobs created in April. The unemployment rate down to 6.3%. And that's it for today and for this week. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you back here again on Monday.
This is the Bill Press Show.